In the limited vocabulary that they could muster, downright beautiful was the most common description uttered by the exiting party. Marlock and Decimus both must keep their jaws from dropping at the sheer beauty that this world had held. They had landed in a clearing of a forest of glittering white trees, sprouting purple leaves and golden sap that dripped from its bark. The grass had been given a pink hue from taking in the red sunlight from the red dwarf that shone above. Looking out to the void of space, three of the other worlds were on full display. One a bronze pebble nearest to the ruby, that was the red dwarf. The other an icy world that, due to being tidally locked, sported an ocean that gave it the appearance of a large blue eye. The third was rather eccentric. It didn't make sense geologically, textured like a crystal, though it was blotted out by the clouds in the sky before any other features could be seen. Back down on the ground, the search group took some time to admire the beauty of the land. Among the pink grass were plants of varying colours. It was like a kaleidoscope of flowers formed around the base of every tree, adding to the wonder. Glowing orbs of blue light hovered around the world, like the blossoms of the trees, creating sparkling droplets that dazzled the eyes. Decimus let one land in his hand. Like a snowflake, it melted, yet the temperature did not change from the moderate climate scanned from orbit. Marlock took his time and sat down on the grass, feeling it in his fingers. It was silky ribbons, brushing ever so calmly in the wind. It became apparent to the blue-scaled Yorbrail, known as Carstall, that they were not alone, spotting a small, winged, pointed-eared humanoid sitting on one of the tree branches. The group go into alert. They remain calm, and weapons still sheathed. Decimus slowly approached the tree, with the observer perched upon it, with his hands in a gesture of peace, showing no weapons or ill intent. "Hello, friends! Lovely time of day, what you say?" gleefully asked the strange yet endearing creature. The voice was almost childlike in tone. Marlock had to do a double take in disbelief. They did not see them coming, pondering it's either brave by a mile or completely dim-witted to hide they would be welcoming to aliens. Decimus, with a calm demeanour, trying to match the mannerisms of the native, inquired, "Why, yes, it's simply marvellous. I love to admire it, but I and my cohorts here are occupied with a task. You might be able to help us if you wish." "Oh, I'm not sure of that, though. I'm curious. What be the task that requires a bunch of armed soldiers to accompany you?" Decimus tilts his head with a smile. "Can't argue with the caution. Nearby here a few months ago. Sod, I cannot keep this up. A ship that belonged to our forces stopped reporting in after being on this world for 2 weeks. I was hoping to find some answers on its disappearance, and what better way to find out that than by your local knowledge?" The creature takes time to ponder, while the group notice they're being observed by many more, only the bright azure eyes giving them away from the interior of the tree's shadows around them. "I accept to help. Okay, guys, come out." From every tree they could think of, at least a couple of the small creatures emerged. Marlock observed the cavities. He noticed that they contained items that could be taken as personal belongings. He had a little chuckle, admiring the simplicity that the trees were their houses. "My name's Decimus, and yours?" "Phaon. I'm one of the village's elders. Don't let me youthful appearance fool you. We Obero can live for hundreds of years." Decimus considered that their vision of a year is vastly different, considering the orbital period of this planet. Guessing the age of him would be around 30 years of his. Now I advise your boomsticks stay where you are. As you can see, we ourselves aren't really equipped for the likes of you. Right this way, please. I believe we have the answers you seek. Gesturing to a stone path that leads through a darkened area of the canopy, lit up by large bioluminescent leaves and glowworms. So you claim to have the answers, yes? Marlock, interjecting while Decimus is distracted by more floating flowers. He even touched one on, and giggled as its petals closed and opened rapidly, making it fly away from him. Ah, yes, I do, chum. We in the village knew for a while that more of you would come, but I do have just one question for you. Snapping out of his entrancement of the area's beauty, Decimus acknowledges Phaon to ask. There's this big guy about the size of you. Came here a few minutes. A few minutes? Ooh. Man, I didn't sleep well today. Came here a few years ago. We find him to be an odd fellow. Barely visits us, only for advice on where to hunt for food. Sometimes we trade with him, but he's a rather reclusive fella. Could he be one of yours? One of the accompanying soldiers answers, To be honest, our recordings of this planet only date to the arrival of the expeditionary. You get visitors from other worlds, I guess? Since you don't strike to be creating basic aerial vehicles. Phaon swoops over to the woman and hovers around her. Well spotted, darling. Yes, the rather silly Mukala peoples have no respect for the environment like we do, so we tend to keep to ourselves. But their cities are ginormous compared to ours. Oh, did you know that they have these weird things called computers that speak by themselves? It's weird. She laughs at the childish innocence of him. Yes, in fact, the things we came in is one. Phaon's jaw met his chest in awe at the thought of it. No. While I do admire your curiosity, Phaon, I must remind you that my mission is paramount. We're getting close to the last reported signal. Now tell me more about this person you just spoke of. Well, Desi, if I can call you that. Decimus was not amused. He's got some bright blue eyes and, he had quills like yours. The news slightly startled the captain. His pupils tightened like an animal on high alert. But they were more concentrated. He arrived, or more or less he crashed, on this planet, landed in a giant crystal, was rather mopey and clearly wanted to be left alone. Took some time for him to open up, but still we don't know much about him. Though since you mentioned your missing ship, he did move into it, and is sort of his recluse. The committee exit the boundaries of the forest and gaze upon a vast grassland for miles around. The crashed ship was the only monolithic structure out of place in this luxurious landscape. Phaon retired himself to a rock and sat back. This is as far as we tend to go near it. We're not really big fans of stuff like that. Decimus doesn't blame him. The commander noticed that the ship had been torn in two. Yet upon closer inspection, the edges of the tiers didn't show signs of burns from entering the atmosphere. It was as if the ship was physically ripped in half. Cautiously, the task force makes their way towards the outside of the wreckage. Marlock signals the engineer of the group to take out her scanner. Taking point, Marlock is closely followed by Decimus and the troopers as they slowly pace themselves up towards the carved-out entrance. Noticing broken pieces of equipment, from armor to weapons, all scattered around as they went through. Suddenly, Decimus's quills began to ruffle, and was frozen in place, paralyzed by fear. Marlock catches on, and was visibly confused. He's never seen the commander be so paralyzed by fear before. Sir, what's gotten into you? The commander mutters, stammering in his words. No way. Can't be. No, ridiculous. I'm going mental. The soldiers around him began to worry. They take out their weapons as a precaution. Then the two Bray Lords Justicars wondered why they're suddenly on the floor and cannot feel their legs. The grim reality sets in. They'd been cleaved in half. So fast was the blow to their bodies that they had yet to react. Then when the realization hit both soldiers, they let out a cry of agony that snapped Decimus out of his fear-driven state. Without hesitation he yelled, "Out! Everyone out! Firebird, pick us up immediately! Threat level Omega!" Hearing those words, threat level Omega, caused a panic among the soldiers. Their professional and cautious approach was now replaced with utter terror. Some so determined to get away as quickly as possible that they dropped their weapons and pieces of their equipment as to lighten themselves before breaking into a full-on sprint. Marlock and Decimus stay at the rear. The Braylors, already too late to save, bled out and drew their last breath. Reaching the clearance of the grasslands, the Firebird is seen lowering itself to pick up. "No time for that! Hold your position, Firebird," commanded Decimus. He lets out a whistle that catches the group's attention, and grabbed the glowing orb at his chest plate, which formed a ring. He grabbed it and threw it in front of him. The ring expanded into a large doorway that showed the inside of the Firebird's cargo hold inside. It was a portal. Marlock had spotted a silhouette of a man, stood on a beam in the wreckage. He took aim and fired, only to blink and see the man gone from his sights. The last of the troops had entered the portal in a huge rush. Decimus patted Marlock to get in since he had to be the last, so he could close it from the other side. A deafening crunch of metal drowns out the chaotic roar of the Firebird's engines. The two watch in utter surprise as a land vehicle is hurled at them. The elusive figure stood where it once was. Decimus shoved Marlock through the portal and braced, knowing he couldn't get there in time before the car would reach him. He catched the vehicle in his hands with superhuman strength. The metal beneath him crunched as well and screeched as he slid across from the shock of the impact, though he himself was not broken. He lowered the vehicle to his side, and his quills began ruffling again. Instinctively, he threw himself backwards towards the portal and went limp. A fist slammed into his chest plate with an incredible force, enough to think that he should have took the car instead. The impact hurled him through the portal, sliding across the floor of the cargo hold and crashing into heavy cargo boxes, the sheer impact knocking some off the floor. Gaining composure, yet winded by the impact, Decimus rushed and closed the portal just before the person put his arm through. Medics rushed to tend him, helping him lay down on a stretcher. Marlock helps lift him up and takes him to the medical area of the Firebird. Noticing the unease of the soldiers that made it out, and he himself fearful of the threat level announced, he asked his commander with a clear sense of urgency, "The hell was that? And why are we deeming it as the maximum threat level?" The commander lets out a cough of blood and clutched onto his chest plate. "Don't ask me how I am then. I'm fine, by the way. But to answer your question, I was a veteran of the Diogen Wars, as you know." The Diogen Wars. The mention of that conflict gave everyone that heard it pause and reflection. Some started to sweat in fear, and a couple sat down holding their heads in disbelief. "Well, I have suspicion to believe who we just came into contact with is the one who is in charge of the Daijin Federation. That our empire had to pull so many resources into defeating. Marlock shook his head in disbelief. Clearly the blow knocked more than the breath out of you. Decimus slams on the table, silencing him and the others. Take it from a man who shared the same battlefield as him. It very well is. We must inform the generals. Tiberius has returned. Tiberius. Hearing that name caused a shadow of anxiety on all the crew, as if the bird began to freeze. The Firebird left the planet that was being watched by Phaeon from its surface, who slowly and cautiously approached the wreckage. He sees the man who brought such panic to the soldiers, holding the upper body of one of the fallen soldiers before tossing it aside with minimal effort. He slammed his foot into the ground and let out a shout to the sky that rattled the ship around him and sent an echo across the lands. Phaeon trembled at the sight. What was that all about? You seem to have a history with them. The man gazes with bright, luminous eyes towards Phaeon, still shadowed by the wreckage. He places himself onto a box, speaks in a voice so deep and regal it could compel anyone to think that they listened to a wise orator. My past has now returned to haunt me in the present. When will I have peace again? And that is the end of chapter 1. I do hope that the next one's better. I do hope so. I hope to get better as time goes. I hope to get better recording equipment and some artwork to accompany, and also look into some music, or use your own. Do mention it in the comments, please. But thank you very much for listening. I really do mean that. So hopefully next week we'll get chapter 2. Stay tuned. We're going to learn some more things about this man by the name of Tiberius, and just why his dreams, or maybe lack thereof, could become something severe.